Hi, I'm Bill Faris. I'm a Christian counselor, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that I think affects all of us who love God, want to walk with God, want to follow God, and want to please God in this life. It's the question of divine guidance. And what I hope to do in this talk today is to open up this discussion, maybe a little bigger than you might have been accustomed to thinking about divine guidance. I want to talk about four different kinds of divine guidance and how they kind of differ from each other and how they land in our life experience. The first kind of divine guidance I would like to speak to is the obedient kind of divine guidance. In other words, this is a divine guidance that assumes there is a correct choice and an incorrect choice based on our obedience to God. There is a choice A over here that is the correct choice, perhaps. Therefore, choice B, or maybe B, C, and D, or whatever, is incorrect. And I want to be sure to be guided by God to choose the correct one, choice in this case A. But maybe in another situation, we look at choice B and we say, well, is choice B the correct choice and not choice A? God, is it A or is it B? Is it B or is it A? Which of these reflects my obedient choice to do what you want, what you will, which is your will, God, and which is not your will? So there's times that I've experienced that. There's times that you've experienced that. I will experience that again someday, and so will you. So I'm going to start with that one. It's kind of a familiar question about guidance. How do we know which of the A, B choices is the God ordained and God pleasing choice? Well, this kind of goes to something I want to touch on for a moment, and it has to do with the word decide, because we have to decide A or B, B or A. Well, what about this decide thing? Decide is a word that comes from Latin. The CIDE part of decide is the same Latin root word that we find in homicide, suicide, patricide, infanticide. What does it mean? Of course, but to kill or cut off. And that's why to decide something can sometimes feel very powerful, a little scary, a little awesome in that sense of heavy, because we know that if I choose A, I'm going to be killing off B and everything having to do with B. And if I choose B, there goes A, bye bye, and everything having to do with A. God, do I choose B or do I choose A? Do I choose A or do I choose B? And that was where I found myself early in my Christian experience, a new Bible school grad, a newlywed husband, wanting to serve God full time in the ministry. And at the time, this is some years ago now, I was struggling to choose between two churches that wanted me to serve their congregations as a youth pastor, a youth minister, both of them offering attractive things to me as a opportunity to do my first full-time ministry. One of these churches was in a place called Simi Valley, California, on the other side of Los Angeles from where I was living and already serving in Orange County, California. And now both churches wanted me to select one of them to serve as a full-time youth pastor. Well, God, do you want me in A or B? Orange County, Simi Valley. Simi Valley, Orange County. This church, that church. Oh dear, did I ever wrestle with that one. Weeks, literally weeks of earnest prayer, fasting, seeking God, please show me, shine your light on one of these choices. I want to obey you. I want to please you. I want to make the right choice and not the wrong choice. Assuming that, kind of like the Jonah experience in the Bible, there was a place to be and there was a place not to be. And the place to be was the place God wanted me, and the place to not be was the place God didn't want me to take as a choice. And so I was trying and wrestling so hard to come up with the correct choice. Finally, after putting off the churches, both churches, and the time was running out, I had to say yes to one and no to the other. I sat on a bench one day outdoors while on a walk, and I heard the voice of the Lord break through my fog and confusion and say something to my heart I wasn't expecting. What he said was, "Oh, Bill, you don't understand. I'll bless you in either place. But if you knew you were carrying my blessing, where do you think it would do the most good?" Well, when I kind of heard it through that angle, suddenly, with no question at all, I knew it was Simi Valley. I knew that if I followed through on serving at the opportunity in Simi Valley that was being offered to me, I would be most effective. The gift I carried would do the most good. And so finally, I was able to select based on that criteria. And it taught me a lesson that not all choices are a right and a wrong, in the sense that God won't bless me in one and he will totally bless me in the other. But sometimes a choice is about, hey, you carry a blessing. Hey, you carry a gift. Hey, you carry a passion, a vision, some skills, whatever it is, some relationships. Now, where will that do the most good? Where will that benefit God's kingdom the most and God's mission the most? And so that was how I was able to settle that. And I learned that some choices are obedience, Jonah type choices. And I learned there was a second category. That second category I'm going to call partnership choices. In this sense, God was saying, I'm in a partnership with you, Bill. I'm going to bless you. And as my partner in this blessing, you're going to carry that blessing somewhere. Where do you think it would do the most good? And so I think of this a little bit in terms from the Bible, like Abraham and Lot. Do you remember that Abraham and Lot had come to a point in their relationship? Abraham was the uncle, Lot was the nephew, and they both had accumulated quite a bit of possessions and family and things. And so Abraham and Lot stand surveying a great piece of land, and Abraham says, Lot, go ahead and choose whichever direction you go, whichever claim you make, I'll make the other one. It doesn't matter to me, Lot. You go ahead and set this up. Which would you prefer? And so Lot chooses one particular chunk of land, I'll say it that way, and Abraham goes, fine, I'll just take the other one. In other words, Abraham was confident in this particular situation that God was going to bless him wherever he settled. And so he was just going to settle in the place that Lot wasn't going to settle. And that was how Abraham selected or ended up in a particular place at that time. And that's maybe sometimes the second kind of guidance, the obedience, A or B. Yes, God has an A, do A, not B, or whatever. And sometimes it's a partnership. I'm putting a blessing on you. Now, where do you want to partner with me to release that blessing for the benefit of others and the benefit of the kingdom? And that brings us to a third choice. This is the third kind of divine guidance. This is what I call the trust choice or the trust guidance. And you're saying, well, Bill, isn't all divine guidance a matter of trusting God and trust? To which I would say, yes, of course it is. But I heard a story some years ago that helped me see this in a new light. It's a true story. I actually looked it up on the internet. There's names and dates and all kinds of features to this story I was able to find that convinced me it had actually happened. It wasn't just an anecdote. But a priest that had been uh, sent to work with Mother Teresa in Calcutta, an American priest, was coming up to the end of his time of service there. And he got with Mother Teresa and said, Mother Teresa, I'd like you to pray for me. To which she said, okay, well, how can I pray for you? And he said, well, I'm so impressed that you were given such clarity in starting your mission here in Calcutta. I'm going to be making some big decisions when I go back to the States. And I want God to give me clarity, like he gave you so much clarity about starting this mission and serving the poorest of the poor in Calcutta. And she said, well, there's a couple things. One is you're very mistaken about how much clarity I had. If you know Mother Teresa's story, she was actually on a train riding to India to serve in a convent school in Calcutta, those days called Calcutta, uh, and uh, and she had in her mind that that was going to be her way of life, was to be serving in this convent school. And on the train, the Lord appears to her and comes to her in unmistakably clear way and says, I'm calling you to the poorest of the poor. I'm changing your idea of what your purpose is. I'm sending you this very different direction. You're going to be in the right place, so to speak, Calcutta, but you're going to be in a very different mission. And that happened to Mother Teresa once. And she formed her whole next long season of her life and her reputation that we've come to know her based on that vision, that intervention of the Lord's guidance. That was all the clarity she had. And she, if you know her story, she struggled often with that question of, was she in the right place doing the right thing? Because she had to go off that one very specific, strong, but solo sense of divine guidance. And so this priest was sort of mistaken to think that she was so super clear about her calling and mission. And so she corrected that. And then she said this. She said, and here's the other thing. I can't pray for clarity because if you have clarity, you won't need trust. I'll pray for trust. Now, I've thought a lot about that since I first heard that story. And and I think you think probably, well, wait a minute. God does sometimes give us clarity when we ask for it. Sometimes we're seeking God's guidance, and sometimes we're seeking his light to make a hard choice or make hard choices. And we feel like God gives us a map. He gives us clarity. He says, go here, not here, whatever it is. And yes, there are times when clarity seems to be an appropriate thing to ask for and is granted to us for the asking. But let's be honest, there are also times that we have sought such clarity and it hasn't come. And it's not because we're asking the wrong question. It's not because we're in sin or we're somehow out of God's will so far that we can't hear him anymore, or that he's withholding information from us to tease us or toy with us. No, no, no. Sometimes God withholds clarity, or shall I say, sometimes God doesn't give us the map, because then we'll just have a relationship with the map instead of with God, the map maker. And I think there are times that God kind of sets that up where we're asking for the map and he says, well, in this case, you're not going to get a map. You're just going to get an opportunity to trust in me one step at a time. And you and I will walk together this road of guidance in real time relationship. I'm going to exercise those trust muscles in your spiritual fiber. And I think that actually all four of these ways that I'm describing exercise different spiritual muscles. The first one of obedience, that exercises, that A or B, that exercises our obedience muscles. Sometimes we have to choose and select A and not B, or vice versa, because that exercises our will to be obedient to God's will and exercises those obedience muscles. Sometimes, though, like in my other story, it exercises our partnership muscles. We're carrying something from God and he wants us to partner with him. And so those are the muscles that are getting exercised. And sometimes it might be that he's exercising our trust muscles. And that's, I think, the Mother Teresa story, where he's saying, well, just in this case, just trust me. We're going to take this a bit at a time. I think again of Abraham early in his calling, when the Lord called him from Ur of the Chaldees to go to a place, quote, that I will show you. Well, where is that, Lord? Or think about Jesus in the Gospels. Well, where are you going, Lord? Well, follow me. He didn't answer all those questions. He didn't always forewarn his disciples, his followers, on what was coming or what would be next. Sometimes he would just say, Let's go together. Follow me. You'll find out as in the going, you'll find out. And he's exercising our trust and our attachment muscles, if you will, to God, not not just to God's will, but to God himself, to the Lord himself. And the fourth kind of divine guidance I want to spotlight today is what I would call the fine-tuning guidance. This is the kind of guidance that comes when we're on a mission for the Lord. We're doing what God has asked us to do. We're walking in some kind of obedience to Him. Let's say it's like Paul, called to the Gentiles. You know, the Lord did a lot to get Paul ready for that mission, for that calling, for that missionary call to go. And so, what did Paul do? He headed out in the direction of lots of Gentiles as he left Palestine and that whole area of the world that he was in, and he moved up closer to Asia Minor and all of those territories which were completely occupied for the most part by non-Jewish people, Gentile peoples and people groups and civilizations. And he began to say, well, to obey the Lord, I'm going to head toward this mission, this purpose, this goal that he's given me. And I'm going to obey him in that way. And so he goes and he begins that mission. But you'll recall in the book of Acts, there is a point where Paul has an intention to go up into a deeper direction of the one that he's been traveling in and just kind of continue the mission in that way. And then he has a dream one night. It's called the dream of the Macedonian man. In this dream, a man from Macedonia speaks to Paul, and in the dream says, Paul, come over here and work with us, help us. And so Paul fine tunes, readjusts his route and his intention to go to Macedonia rather than his original intended destination. And so I call this a fine tuning guidance. In other words, we've already got the big picture laid out. We're already in God's will, walking in obedience, walking in trust, walking in faith, in partnership with God, all those other ways. But then God sometimes will come along and just sort of like fine tune, tweak, give us a little extra direction at a particular point to modify or fine tune our mission or our obedience to him. And that's another way that God guides. Sometimes he says, just get going. And as we get going in what I've got for you, if you need some fine tuning, if you need a little extra direction, I'll just go ahead and give that to you in real time when you need it. And so that's a fourth way that I'm going to call a divine guidance motif. So these four motifs, one more time, are obedience. There is an A and a B and an A, and you're to choose the God anointed, God appointed, correct one that is his will versus the one that is not his will. Okay. The second one, though, is a partnership guidance where we are carrying something, we're walking in something that God wants to release through our life, through our interaction with people, through our service, whatever it might be. And he's asking us to partner with him. Where do you think it will do the most good? Where do you see the blessing having the greatest impact, or the gift, or the relationships you'll be making, what have you? The third one is the trust motif. Just, I'm not going to give you clarity right now. I'm just going to ask you to trust me, and we'll just walk it out a little at a time, and it'll get clearer as you go. And then the fourth one, this fourth motif of fine tuning. Yes, you're already in my will. Yes, you're doing the right things. Yes, you're going the right direction, so to speak. But as you now need a little tweaking, a little fine tuning to even get it more dialed in, what I have in mind for you, I'll give you that when you need it. And it'll come in the form of a fine tuning, and it will help you modify and calibrate your service or your worship or your life for me in a way that is a little bit even more of what I have in mind. But you don't get that necessarily way ahead of time. It's more like in the now. So that's what I have to say about divine guidance in this talk. And I hope it helps you to open up and hear the way of God in your life and experience the way of God in your life in a little bit more of a complete or a little bit more of an expanded way that helps you serve the Lord, love the Lord, and walk with the Lord in real time.